All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking, of course, about real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, Motley Crue versus Pearl Jam. Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx has blasted Pearl Jam as one of the most boring bands in history after Eddie Vedder revealed that he despised glam metal in the late 1980s. Shocker, huh? Shocker. So here's my quick take on this, right? So Motley Crue, they lived a very decadent and ridiculous and quite honestly annoying lifestyle. There's this new Hulu series that's out there, Pam and Tommy. From what I've heard from people, it's like soft core. It's real bad how much stuff they reveal. All right. I'm just putting it out there. You're an adult. If you want to go watch it, I don't know if this is an authorized thing. I heard that Tommy said that some of this information just had to come to light so we can fix the problems that we have now. And that is kind of Motley Crue's fallback position, is that, look, yeah, were we over the top? Were we abusive toward women? Yeah. And most people don't want to go back to the image. What they want to go back to are the melodic hooks that were created by these bands, including Motley Crue, right? I'm not a huge Motley Crue fan, but again, if you strand me on an island and I want to survive the island and I want to get off the island and not feel like crap about myself, I'm not going to listen to Pearl Jam because that's not going to help. Look, I understand this whole idea of there had to be a correction, but I was there on the ground when this stuff started to happen. And this was record industry. This was label driven. This was not driven by the population who weren't fed up with melodic rock. In fact, they liked dance music, right? And dance music was very melodic. But this other stuff that came along changed everything. The dance music scene changed into the hip hop gangster rap scene. All right. So you couldn't hear like Black Box on the radio anymore. That was an old form and nobody wanted to just strike it up anymore. And again, a song I played relentlessly as a DJ, and all of that was wiped aside. Now, Vedder, of course, goes on to talk about the culture, but he doesn't talk about writing good hooks. He does praise Guns N' Roses, which kind of was something in the middle because they were more traditional, but they were still attracting the heavy metal and hard rock glam type people. They were still doing that. And there's no question that maybe Guns was a little closer to what Pearl Jam was all about, but not really, because Guns N' Roses occasionally wrote a really good hook. It got you into the song. Now, if you're going to tell me like Jeremy has this great hook, I'm just going to be like, whatever, dude. Look, I have a lot of patrons coming over and they're saying things like, hey, I like you a lot, but on grunge, I don't really agree with you. And I'm like, here's where I'll compromise with you a little bit. Grunge music is organic music. I don't necessarily like it. Like MC5, they keep trying to nominate MC5. Is it organic? Yeah. But it's not my preferred listening form. Look, I'm a guy who grew up on adult contemporary music. So my favorite form is certainly not either one of these two. I can appreciate the melodic rock of Motley Crue, and I can, to a lesser extent, appreciate the fact that Pearl Jam was playing real organic music. Doesn't mean I have to like it. And there are a lot of things that go out there that are real that I might not particularly like. But this battle between all of the glam stuff and all of the melodic rock was bad. And good thing Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, whoever else, STP came along to save the day. And by the way, everybody ignores in this argument that there was a blues rock revival going on at the time. You had albums by Gary Moore and Robert Cray and a whole host of other major guitar slingers who were bringing back that tradition that really started probably in the late 1960s. But the production value on a lot of those older records wasn't near what they were doing with the new blues albums. Even John Lee Hooker, I think, had an album out right around 1990 or so that was getting rave reviews, and people were like, hey, who is this dude? Who is this John Lee Hooker guy? And you had, I don't know, I'd have to go through a list. I know we had Kenny Wayne Shepherd come along a bit later, and he made a quick splash and then he was removed. Like, we had something get through the arsenal of really bad music in 1995. And you had other bands that were kind of petering out, like Van Halen, and they were trying to fit in to that scene, which was really stupid. They should have just been themselves. But you had total destruction of bands that weren't like Motley Crue, like Mr. Big and Firehouse, right? Were they like Motley Crue? Okay, Firehouse had a hot-looking chick on their album cover, right? And so that's the end of that. And Eddie Vedder says, I just didn't like the way the girls were portrayed. And, the grunge scene, the Seattle scene allowed for women to dress more like guys. That's basically what he says. I can quote what he actually says here. I appreciated that in Seattle and the alternative crowd, the girls could wear their combat boots and sweaters, and their hair looked like Cat Powers and not Heather Locklear's. Nothing against her. Heather Locklear, she's kind of a babe, right? I don't mean to sound like Wayne's World. Look, we have to be real about this stuff. We can't just say everybody who dressed the part and looked the part was evil and corrupt. By the way, the grunge scene introduced a whole new level of hardcore drug abuse. Heroin became a big thing during the flannel shirts and ripped jeans era. Oh, that's so much easier and so much better than the spandex and the hairspray and everything else. Okay, well, you traded one vice for another vice, and you reduced the quotient of melody within music drastically, and you eliminated blues rock completely, because blues rock just hit a wall. Right when this stuff all started to happen, the glam stuff, the blues rock, anything that was more blues oriented and blues based kind of took a big hit and went away. People who had a career that was blossoming, all of a sudden, they couldn't get the time of day. George Thorogood had been on a roll for a number of years and then gone. We don't need George Thorogood. Get a haircut and get a real job, George, right? Just don't bother. It's really not, don't try to sell your music anymore on rock stations, because it's all Pearl Jam all the time. Look, the other issue is, and I think Nikki Sixx here has a point, that all of these bands kind of sounded alike to some degree. They had singers. Some person once said, and I picked up on it, that every vocalist sounded like the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. And he was being serious. And it's a, everybody has that sound. And you're like, okay, is there not a guy? This is why we love Steve Perry and Jimmy Jamison and Lou Gramm. You can't even compare those vocals, those unique, original, amazing, Herculean vocals to the stuff that came in the 90s. You just, at the 90s, no. I'm sorry. I mean, everybody keeps telling me, you don't appreciate Chris Cornell? Okay, sure. Compared to what, though? Just everybody I grew up with just wiped the floor, in my opinion. Now, if you like that form, if you like that form of music, then yeah, Chris Cornell is your ticket to paradise, right? But I want to hear somebody who can sing. I want to hear Bobby Kimball singing Hold the Line, right? That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear some guy who's groveling into the microphone. And that's the difference between really the 90s and then most everything that came before it. Now, I'm sure Eddie Vedder has an appreciation of the music from the 70s and the 60s. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just image or it was the sound, all those syrupy keyboards too. Ew, I don't want to hear keyboards. Keyboards are amazing. They're amazing. And they were used fairly consistently throughout the decades, right? Whether it was a piano, whether it was a Hammond B3, whether it was an amazing synthesizer that, became a really big deal in the 80s, but even prior to that. And then you had all the prog rock bands using all of these keyboards. And does he not like keyboards? I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to read more into this, but that whole line about, mistreating women, yes, I get it. I don't watch that thing on Hulu because that will feed right into this. And probably a million people are going to watch it if it's as lascivious, is that the right word, lascivious, as it could be, or it might be. I don't really care. What I remember are great songs on the radio, cranking it up loud, cranking the windows down, and not wanting to rip out a razor blade and do anything to my wrist, because that's how I felt when I started listening to this other music for a while. I'm like, this stuff just doesn't make you feel good. All right. And at some point, people, we need the escape. We don't need our fears nurtured. We don't need our hatred nurtured. Now, if you're saying that this other stuff, like the Motley Crue stuff, promoted some bad behavior, I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to say, yes, it did. I was there on the ground to see some of that. But I almost thought that these people were almost like play acting a little bit, like they were playing a role, and that we weren't supposed to do that. We just watched them do that, and we said, oh, well, that's a rock star. I'm not a rock star. But when the grunge people came along and they did this ordinary man routine that, yeah, we're all miserable. We all, use heroin and so forth. And this is what life is. I think that was more of a psychological, aid to depression and anxiety than any of the music in the 80s. Whether you were listening to hard rock or dance music in the 1980s or new wave, which was earlier, all of the music forms other than punk, which was obviously a predecessor to all the grunge stuff. If you were listening to most of the music in the 1980s, Thomas Dolby or the Human League or Howard Jones, most of it made you feel really good. It wasn't like, Xanax. It was more like, hey man, this is pretty cool stuff. I can dance to this. I can sing, roll the windows down, have a good time, relax with friends. But that other stuff, how can you party to Pearl? Well, I know how you can party to Pearl Jam. You need some other stuff to party with Pearl Jam for sure. Now, some would say again, sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, substance abuse, it all goes together. That depends. That really depends on you as an individual. And yes, you could probably enjoy all the music from the 1990s and abstain from some of the really bad behavior. But, the leader of that whole thing, Kurt Cobain, he's not here to defend himself right now. And there's a clear reason for that. And you could say, well, the decadence of the 80s, we lost a lot of great players. Motley Crue, had issues. A lot of these bands had issues where either they almost died or somebody in the band did die. I get it. None of it's good, but I'm telling you, I'm just focus on the melodic qualities of the music and how it drastically changed. And yes, the blues thing is important because rock and roll is based on the blues. So if you get rid of that very important element, you say, these guys were blues guitar slingers, they're no longer welcome on the radio. And to this day, I had an album that, where is it? Here it is, right? I was promoting this the other day. I don't usually turn around and do that. Tinsley Ellis, right? Is he welcome on rock stations today? Is he not hard rock enough? No, He's too melodic. He's too good of a musician. He doesn't fit the profile. He's not, you know, I don't know if there's an age problem, but it's more than that. It's a style thing. This used to be cool. This is something that I know I would have added to the playlist of our old radio station that I was a part of back in the late 80s and early 90s, because this was smoking hot. This format, couldn't get enough of it. By the way, it mixes really well with classic rock. Whereas some of the glam stuff doesn't, but kind of does. But none, you're gonna disagree with me here, but none of the grunge stuff mixes with good old school blues-based classic rock. That's my argument. Now, you don't have to agree. I'm getting a lot of, you know, pushback from new patrons who like my commentary on the political stuff, but they're like, no, I listen to all this. It's fine. It's fine. Here's my little caveat at the very end of this video. Is grunge better than the music that's out there today? For the most part, yes, because it was performed by real musicians using real instruments. Now, you can debate on how well they played those instruments, but there's no debate on how they recorded the songs and how the songs sound compared to what comes out of speakers nowadays, which is pretty much Pro Tools, computer-generated programs. I don't hear natural instruments. I don't hear any natural ingredients. It's all artificial flavors and colors. So anyway, that's my take on the Nikki Sixx versus Eddie Vedder showdown. Nikki Sixx didn't even call Eddie Vedder by name. He said, "Oh yeah, the guy from Pearl Jam. He said he doesn't like Motley Crue," and he says, you know, that's coming from the guy who led one of the most boring bands of all time. That's pretty harsh words, but certainly this kind of publicity with Motley Crue going into the whole stadium tour thing, and then the documentary Pam and Tommy, whatever it is, these guys love publicity, and they're going to get a ton, and they're going to sell a lot of tickets. They just are, because guess what? Those fans that everybody said just all changed their mind at the same time, those fans never went away. Whether you like Motley Crue or not, their fan base didn't completely dry up. Now, do I feel comfortable at my age celebrating all of the crap that is now being put out there for the world to see? Nope. It's horrible. I will say this, it's horrible. But the stuff that bands that like Pearl Jam and all these guys who celebrated like hard drugs and stuff and seemed really depressed all the time, that's probably even worse. Let's just be honest. I mean, that's my opinion, and I know my opinion is maybe the minority opinion, especially with today's rock media. See, this is the thing. You can't critique anything. Everything is on the same playing field. You know, everything is the same, whether it's Motley Crue or Pearl Jam. Just put it all in the same box. And hey, there are some people who can actually like both of those bands and not have a problem with it. And I think that's the way it should have been going forward. Let these two entities compete in the marketplace. Don't shut the other band out and then just bring in all these other bands to replace it. No, have a level playing field, and the best music wins. But we don't do that. We haven't done that for 30 years. So anyway, that's my video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.